We are live.
Well, hello everyone.
Hello, hello.
And Cynthia. I'm pulling you to the stage on IG.
All right, give me 1 second.
We are getting IG set up. How's everyone doing? Drop a emoji in the chat of how you're feeling today.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty good. We had a lot of sun here in the Carolinas. It's beautiful outside. It's been a good day, Candace. I won't complain. We get to choose, right? We can choose to call out everything that's going wrong, or we can choose what's going
Mm-hmm.
right. And today I'm choosing to focus on the positive.
As we all should.
It happens.
I started today a little bit underneath the weather, still going through this cold here. But it's turning out to be a great day.
Awesome.
There. Did you
Oops,
emoji in the chat on IG?
I think I just requested. It's a little behind, but
Gotcha. All right. We are live, everyone. Did you come up?
um, am I there?
Uh-uh.
It's requested.
Let's do it one more time. We still figuring out these technical things here.
All right, there we go.
Hey,
You gotta turn down. It's echoing.
I turned it down. There we go.
Perfect.
All right, everyone. So welcome to another week's edition of Lighting the Torch. My name is Candace Miles. I am the founder and CEO of No Gap Consulting, where I am empowering Black millennial and Gen Z women who are entering to leadership for their very first time. So they have never been into leadership at all. That this is their very first step. That is where I come in to help them with the skill sets, the resources, and confidence they need in order to succeed early on. But I'm also the oldest of three, I will say. I am the oldest, and I am a future wife out there to somebody's son. I don't know who that is, but somebody's son.
Put it
But
in
I
the
am
atmosphere.
to someone's son. And I am your co-host representing the millennial generation in lighting your torch. Cynthia, what about yourself?
Awesome. Well, I have this amazing experience to share this platform with my good friend and colleague out there from the West Coast, out there in San Diego. And I am bringing the Gen X perspective by way of the Carolinas on the East Coast. And again, for those that are joining, my name is Cynthia Haley. I am founder and CEO of Transition to Infinite Possibilities. And I say CEO because it stands for the Chief Energy Officer, where I specialize in coaching professionals to not just elevate their careers, but also elevate their energy so that they are able to succeed in life and transition to infinite possibilities, both personally and professionally. All right, so let's get into it, Candace. So today we want to talk about a topic that we felt near and dear and aligned with National Stress Awareness Month. But first of all, can you even believe it's April?
Mm-mm.
It's April. Before you know it, it'll be summer and we'll be saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. But time is going by really fast. And with time, you're thinking about work, right? And all of the things that are coming into play with that. And sometimes it can weigh heavy on your shoulders. And so we want to ask you all, have you ever felt like you're carrying the weight of your work on your shoulders? Let's talk about it. Let's discuss that. Um, but to kick us off in this conversation, I thought I would also tie in the theme for National Stress Awareness Month, which is little by little, a little becomes a lot. And when I thought about that, Candace, I don't know, I don't think I told you this, but My initial reaction hearing the theme, I went to a negative connotation, right? I went to yeah, little by little becomes a lot because it's stress. It just keeps compounding, compounding, and compounding until my shoulders feel like they're on the ground, right? And then it
Mm-hmm.
didn't hit me until today as I was kind of getting ready. I reread what the Stress Management Society wanted to emphasize by way of this theme. So I'm going to read it. It said, you know, they want to emphasize how even the smallest steps taken each day towards self care and stress reduction can yield significant improvements in mental health over time. So that was the flip side. And so what I took from that was our mindsets really play a part in how we see and experience the world, and how we carry that stress is how we think of it also, right? Because again, my first thought was, yeah, little by little, that stress getting heavier and heavier. But if I think of it
Mm-hmm.
as little by little, if I start to really put focus on me and things that I want to do for myself and reduce that stress, I'd be in a much better position. So tell me what you thought. I know we talked about that as the theme, but I'm curious to know when you hear the theme, what came up for you.
Immediately when we started thinking about this whole question to talk about carrying the weight, I thought about isolation
Mm,
and how most leaders, especially the new ones coming in, but even as you get more tenure into the role, into your leadership journey, how being a leader, we always want to take on too much. And when we take on too much, then we isolate ourselves not only from helping out our team, which are our direct reports, but also too from our peers, from our, some of us have spouses, from our kids, when you take on that much weight in your job.
right, right. Definitely isolation. I'm telling you, I can remember, and if I don't know if my daughter's watching this, but there's a funny piece, right? Well, not so funny. She was probably 2 or 3 years old, right? And I was in leadership, managing a big team. Um, and I was always on my phone, right? Back then it was a BlackBerry. So that's my generation. I'm calling it out as my generation. I had a BlackBerry, right? When I was nobody has a BlackBerry these days. Not just in Microsoft, but I had a BlackBerry, and I would be in the kitchen cooking, BlackBerry right there, laptop on the kitchen table, trying to do everything because you only get a couple hours once you got home, right?
Mhm.
And one day, this little one says, "You're always on your phone." And in that moment, I realized I was doing just what you described, right? Isolating myself from my daughter because I was so ingrained in what needed to be done for work. And the weight was really on my shoulders. And I was really carrying that weight and not showing up the way I wanted to at home. And so, if there are any parents out there listening, or if you find yourself in the same predicament, put the phone down. My
Mhm.
rule of thumb is if it's not on fire, it's going to be okay. We're not putting out fires, we're not saving lives. If that's not your profession, give it a moment, step away, be present at home for just a few. And if you really feel like you got to go back to it after they go to bed. You know,
Yeah, because you're creating a gap,
correct.
between yourself and whoever your relationship is with, and kind of taking that back into the corporate setting, you're creating that gap, like I mentioned before, between you and your teams, with
Mhm.
you and your boss at times, and that's the person that you need to lean on when it comes to trying to figure it out. But isolating, thinking that you can just figure it out on your own, that's the main thing I thought about when it came to carrying weight on the shoulders. And where I experienced it the most is when I was trying to show up in this image of I got this.
Mm.
where yes, I understand that, I'm a leader. I got to show and prove that I can do this, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to figure this out. But as I'm sitting there trying to figure out things that necessarily wasn't something that was actually years ahead of me even understanding what to do,
Yeah.
I added that stress, that chronic stress
Mm-hmm.
on myself versus just raising my hand and saying, "Hey, I need help.
That's
I actually need help," which
real.
is the biggest thing that people like one of the top things that people won't say.
That is so true. And it reminds me of the show. I don't know if this is generational too, but remember the show with Gabrielle Union she had out, and they had a segment on there where they were focused on how common it is for people to say, you say, how are you doing today? It's like, I'm okay. It's just so natural when in fact they're masking how you truly feel. And so when you translate that even into the workplace, if you're a boss, you're in a one-on-one and they say, how's it going? How are you feeling? How comfortable are you really sharing how you truly feel and what support needs to look like for you so that you can release some of that weight that's on your shoulders?
So, is it your boss's responsibility to ask those type of questions to alleviate some of that weight?
I say
Or
yes.
is it their self-awareness to know, like, hey, I keep giving this person project after project, responsibility after responsibility? Is it their responsibility if that person is not saying no?
I'm going to say there's always, we each play a role. When I say we, me as a leader, you as an employee, right? You play a role in that because if you continue to take, and not use your voice to press that pause button, what's behind that? Is it the hero mentality and you feel like I got it, I got it, I got it, I can do it, I want to show up, I got to do it, I got to do it? Or is it fear? You know what I mean? And so there's an element there of finding your voice and feeling comfortable enough to put in some boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
even in the workplace. Brene Brown, I always quote this in Brene's Brown book, Dare to Lead. She talks about painting the picture of done. And so when your boss keeps bringing you things and bringing you things, you have to get to a point where you can paint the picture of done. And and in the way she illustrated it, it's like you're given an assignment and it's like, wait a minute, let's paint the picture of done because I'm working on this currently. If
Mm-hmm.
I take this on, this is how it's going to affect the other thing. Is it possible to maybe have someone else work on that? Or let's be realistic on the timeline. Can this drop for a couple of days while I go ahead and focus on this? So it's really talking it through and painting the picture of what done should look like and be realistic. Now, in my mind as a leader, I feel like you do have a responsibility to simply do a check-in. It's not getting personal. It's just simply doing a check-in when you do have these one-on-ones, which I suggest you have them regularly, at minimum once a month, right? If
Mm-hmm.
twice a month is great, but at minimum you should be checking in to simply say, how are things going? How are you? Right? And then at that
Mm-hmm.
point, you have the opportunity to choose.
Yeah, because I think too when it comes to that, then when you start coming and approaching it that way, your decision, when it comes to making decisions and you feeling fatigue and not thinking clearly
Mm-hmm.
of how
Mm-hmm.
to make a decision, or even your self-awareness not being on alert or anything like that, it's really important for the individual to know, for that boss to check in sometimes. And I think even leaders leading leaders
Yeah.
understanding that, checking in with them, especially let's talk about that middle, those middle leaderships, which are normally like the ones that just got into leadership, but they're, having to answer to senior leadership, but also to answer to their employees. check in.
Mm-hmm.
Check in on them, and not necessarily in a way where they feel like, oh, you're micromanaging me, but in the sense of, oh, this person actually really cares about my well-being, and yes, I am struggling.
Yeah, being compassionate, right?
Mhm.
Um, Showing up as a true leader. And you're right, oftentimes it's missed in the middle. And for different reasons, those leaders too may be carrying stress, right? They're human, they're carrying the stress of the responsibilities coming down on them to the point they forget I am actually a people leader, not just a process leader. So it's important for me to also check on the people. Um, but when I think about our topic, which the question was, if you're just joining, how do you carry the weight of your work on your shoulders, right? How does that really showing up for you? How are you experiencing the heavy weights that are on your shoulders? And it's Stress Awareness Month. So what does that look like, and how is it showing up for you? One of the things that came to mind for me too is understanding what are the triggers with this
Mhm.
heavyweight work. Is it the people or is it the work? Because sometimes it can be the people, not so much the work.
And sometimes it's both.
And sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's both. But I say the people because I share, this is one of my favorite stories I share all the time, also. So it could be on repeat for somebody. But if you ever listen to Stephen Furtick from Elevation Church, years ago, he said, and I have a post it note for it, stop putting bubble thoughts over people's heads.
Hmm.
Because that in itself can create the unnecessary stress that you're carrying. And those bubble thoughts are like, oh, you're walking into a meeting. I bet you I know what they're thinking. They're probably thinking this, or they probably thinking I didn't do this, or they're thinking this and this, that, and the third, right? So it's like a cartoon strip, and you have all these bubble thoughts over all the characters' heads,
Hmm.
and assuming they're thinking something, and you're creating this narrative that doesn't even exist. And now
True.
you've placed all this weight on your shoulders, and you're carrying it. And it's showing up with sleepless nights, headaches, pain, not being present for your family. You're not exercising like you want to because you're just too tired.
Mhm. Yeah, it's all of that. I love the trigger piece,
Mm-hmm.
because understanding, let's just keep it real with leaders, you're dealing with different personalities. And
Absolutely.
sometimes those personalities don't mesh as much as you want it to be. We're not for, like, I wasn't a leader for everyone. I don't know any leader that's like, oh, all my team loves me. No,
Yeah.
no, this is a reality. No, somebody probably doesn't. But and to be okay with that, but that trigger is to understand, okay, like we talked about, where I was like, my
Mhm.
eye is twitching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my trigger for me, that okay, my body is going underneath some amount of pressure and stress that I may not physically have
Mhm.
been, seeing or noticing, but that's my trigger, is now it's starting to be physical because my eye is twitching.
Yeah.
And by me not doing anything, or allowing myself to continue to go, that's where I come into burnout, fatigue. I remember the first time when my eyes started twitching, I when I got into leadership for the first time, we got a turnover of new leaders coming in, and the VP had told us, "Hey, we need." So I worked in a call center where we were a third party servicing company for, if you call in Yamaha, the 800 number, you got us. And
Mm-hmm.
so we, as the leaders, it was put on the responsibility, because we did not have an official QA team, that we had to listen to 8 incoming calls, 8 coming calls per person each
Mm.
week.
Ooh. Yeah, that's
Each of us had at the time between 12 to 16 employees. Now, where am I supposed to talk about development? How am I supposed to do, the day and day fires that happen?
yeah.
When I say, like, I was there from the beginning of the day to the end of the day just to stay afloat, that stress level, like, I remember particularly sitting there listening to calls, and my eyes started twitching.
Yeah. Yeah. you're hitting on so many things. We could talk about capacity a whole another day, but we've shared stories around the physical impacts of stress, right? And to most people who might be listening, it's no secret. I too had that eye twitch, right? That
Mhm.
led to Bell's palsy. And which, for those who don't know, Bell's palsy is a form of facial paralysis. And one side of my face was paralyzed for about 6 weeks, right? And so I could not blink my eyes at the same time. I could not watch TV. I couldn't read a book, couldn't do much of anything. And in that moment, I had to be still. And what it taught me, and I would say this to anyone listening, if you find yourself in that space where the eye is twitching or you feeling that weight of the world, the weight of your work is really coming on your shoulders so heavy and unbearable, there's a power in that pause button. Take the time for you, because if you don't, you'll be forced to take the time. And when you're forced to take the time, normally it's more time than you would have even wanted
It's
to
the
in the beginning.
forced.
Hmm?
It's the forced time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always say you get those smoke signals. Those smoke
Hmm.
signals are going off, and that smoke signal is letting you know that a fire is about to happen. But if
Exactly.
you don't get that water and water yourself,
Hello.
that's a
That's a,
whole
that's
little
a
thing.
whole word
Somebody
right
look,
there. What did you see how
look,
that kind of hit me just
look.
now? Woo!
if you if you
That hit me.
don't like, it's going to catch on fire.
Oh gosh.
It's going to happen regardless of what
Mhm.
position you're in, whether you are, you just got into the workforce, or if you're in leadership, or if you're in senior leadership, or you're the CEO of a corporation. Regardless, like, whenever those smoke
Mhm.
signals and everything starts going off, you have to take a step back and see exactly what's going on, because ideally it's probably a balancing that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's your, like you said before, that workload, that capacity.
Yeah.
And some,
And
and I don't want to
mhm.
sit here because we don't have any of them representing, but the baby boomers want to hold on to title because that's their identity. And no, your identity is not in your title. Your identity is in who you are, and you holding on to that. You
Yeah.
are actually robbing the next generations from wisdom, and them getting their, them earning their stripes and whatever it is that they want to do, because you want to hold on to something because you allow stress or whatever the case is not allow you to become who the person you are, but outside of that title.
Yeah. And and what you're touching on too is how each generation has culturally um handled stress and how they approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Does the baby boomer generation even call what we're describing stress?
No, my grandma don't.
She probably just says that's just life and you got to learn how to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That whole saying, you
Whereas,
will understand by and by. What?
hello. However, you have the Gen Z generation that are looking, when they think about employment and the workplace, they want to understand, what do you have in place for well-being? Well, how do you support me in my mental stress, my mental health, excuse me. So those things are important to our younger generations. And even myself as a Gen Xer, it's something I think about now. How much time am I being allowed off?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how will it look for me to step away for a moment because I just need a moment?
Mm-hmm.
I recall when I shared this story at my last job, I had a lady reach out to me and say, thank you for sharing your story about the Bell's palsy, because she was experiencing stress on the job that was showing up in the physical aspect, but too afraid to say something because she didn't want to be viewed differently amongst her predominantly male peers. Right. And so that's a whole nother dimension in itself, right? When you think
Mm-hmm.
about gender coming into the mix and how we carry stress um, versus men.
Yeah. And I think you hit something right on the head when you were talking about like the different generations when we are talking about the spectrum of the baby boomers who are still in the work. Some of them are still in the workforce versus the Gen Zers who are entering in there. That's stress in itself
Yeah.
because they're that you're talking about one, two, three generations in between.
Mm-hmm.
That stressing alone when it comes to leadership, like, yeah, they're used to authoritative, hey, do as I say. No, Gen Zers are not. Millennials, we're not. We're going to question. I Any of y'all that agree with me that are millennials, we are going to question, but why? Not in a disrespectful way, but it's just really out of curiosity to understand, okay, but why do we do this? Is it just
Mm-hmm.
something that just because? Or is it something that we actually need to change? So,
Yeah.
like, understanding that stress, like, even that can carry its own weight, especially as leaders.
Right. And so leaders have to learn how to manage the different generations across the workforce, right?
Correct.
And not just learn, but be willing to embrace the fact that there are differences. Last
Mhm.
time we had a segment of Fireside Chat series, we talked about DEI, right? And part of the diversity in the workforce is generational, right? And there are some things that apply to each and it shows up differently. But to your point, majority of our leaders are boomers or Xers like myself, and they may struggle with that in how to lead someone who's in Gen Z and call them lazy when it's not lazy. They just want to understand why are we doing it the way it was done 30 years ago.
It's that part. And then also, too, like, I was seeing where it was some article I was reading about where it shows, like, as they're trying to figure it out, that's at their age, every generation was trying to figure it out at their age. And remember that you used to be their age.
Mm-hmm. Oh
It
God,
may
yeah,
look a
that's
little
true.
bit different, it may because of the different avenues that we have now, but essentially we all were there at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. So we both know that when we get on, and
I know.
we carry the conversation on and on, even outside of this live series. And we'll probably be on here talking to each other for another little while, even after we conclude. But Candace, like, we probably should get ready to wrap it up and kind of circle back on why we were here and what the purpose is of this segment, which is lighting the torch. So I'm going to
Yeah.
turn to you on that one.
So one thing that we are definitely introducing is because this fireside chat is about lighting the torch is that we're going to light each other's torch from generation to generation. And so for me, Cynthia, when it comes to carrying the weight of work on your shoulders, I want to say to you that it is okay for you to stop at good enough.
Mm,
Whatever good enough is, that's determined by you. That's determined by the wisdom that you have over the years, but understanding that good enough is good enough.
I like it. I like it. I received that. I
Hey.
received that. So thank you for that. And I will say, this Gen X flame that will light your millennial flame and all the other flames out there, um, really is about owning your mental power, right? And embracing the power of the pause button. I talked about this earlier in our session, but we really have to be conscious. And what I want for you and everyone else listening is to be conscious of the narratives that we create in our mind that may not even exist. And when we start to experience the weight of the world on our shoulders simply because we're overthinking a situation that could be resolved in a number of different ways, press the pause button and really step back and understand, are we making this situation even more stressful because we are trying to be perfect? Or is there a fear underlying that just needs to be addressed. And so for you, for everyone else listening, my lighting of the torch is own your mental power, press the pause button, and trust the universe in that you will have the desires of your career and your personal professional life simply by taking a step back and making sure that you're not overthinking the situation, and learn that it's okay to be still in that moment. So we hope that you felt today's flame as we have been, lighting the torch for each other and lighting the torch for you. And we want you to continue following us on this journey as we coach and pour into others on different platforms. As you can see on the screen, if you follow me on different platforms, you can find me at Tip Energy Coach. And Candace, you can find her at No Gap Consulting. And of course, if you're on LinkedIn, please continue to follow us and follow us on this journey, because we are strongly believing in this mission and the purpose of what we want to do, which is address the generational gaps, pass the torch, share wisdom, share knowledge to help the next person. And so, as we continue to focus there, join us. We'll be hosting this series every first and third Thursday, and we look to see you there. So, we shall return with our Fireside Chat series in 2 weeks. And what we ask of you is to light someone else's torch and make it a great day. Good night, everyone.
Bye.